How do you get unstuck using LinkedIn?
I think the first thing that people need to do is...
How are you finding YouTube, personally?
Oh, I love YouTube. YouTube is my baby.
You also mentioned in the past that you have two modes of work, super hard and just rest.
Exhausted but exhilarated.
You ever wake up feeling stuck with your career? Lara Acosta has helped hundreds of people get unstuck with personal branding on LinkedIn. She went from 0 to 140,000 followers in just 2 years and is now the top UK female creator. If you have never posted or struggling with your content, then this podcast is for you. Please enjoy this episode of The Playbook with Lara Acosta. How do you get unstuck using LinkedIn?
I think the first thing that people need to do is understand why they are on the platform. A lot of people go onto LinkedIn or any social media platform to get a job or find themselves because someone else told them to. And then they end up either hating it, quitting, or not knowing what to post, and therefore just being like, oh, this doesn't work for me. But you have to understand, okay, what am I going in for? Do I want more followers? Do I want a job? Do I want both? And then what am I able to provide people with, like value-wise? People always say give value to people, but the problem is value looks very different depending on who you are. So finding, okay, if I am Dave and I just graduated from university as a mechanical engineering person, and I also did a lot of marketing internships while it's at uni, then I can merge those two things and be like, okay, I'm going to talk about marketing trends on LinkedIn and also using my specific analytical skills from mechanical engineering to actually do more data-driven research for marketing, and then post about, all the data from e-commerce shops and stuff, and then start building connections from that. And that you're leveraging what you already know with something that's interesting to you. So that's the marketing, because you did a lot of marketing internships. You combine them both, and then you slowly start building an account that's fun to build, easy to maintain because you're learning something that you love doing, and then kind of make connections along the way, which is what LinkedIn then happens. Like it starts like this snowball effect. So if you're looking for a job, when you're posting on LinkedIn, what are you trying to do with your post there? Are you trying to build authority? Are you trying to humanize yourself a little? Like, what are you hoping to build in public there? Yeah, so if you're looking for a job specifically, not building your own job, so like, there's like the entrepreneurship route or like just job, you're trying to showcase the fact that you are competent in what the job that you're applying to is about. If I was out trying to apply to Pretty Little Thing as a marketing intern, then I would consistently be posting about the new trends on like Barbie the movie, all those carousels, etc. Being able to humanize myself was sharing my story about how I just graduated from university and what I'm doing, and like consistently showing that I fit that job description as best as I can. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned networking there. So how does that work in practice, networking? Well, you know it very well. Like, you are one of the best networkers I've ever known. So, networking on LinkedIn is so simple because LinkedIn is a networking platform for one. So networking is at its very core. So once you kind of like get your content sorted out, you understand what to post, what you like posting, then you start talking to people naturally. I always say to people to treat LinkedIn like as a real live networking event where you're like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. You give everyone your 5-minute elevator pitch, like 5 seconds elevator pitch, and then you start talking to people in the industry, which is amazing for people that are looking for jobs because you could literally be connected to the CEO of Pretty Little Thing within the first 10 days if you do it right, just because LinkedIn has this really cool ranking system which is first connections, second connections, and third connections, and you're more likely always one first connection away from your dream CEO. Yeah, you mentioned treat it like a networking event. I've been told like treat it like you're in the pub in the DMs. And I've historically been a recruiter. I've been guilty of connecting and sending the essay. It's like, oh, here's everything I do, which is not the way to do it. No. So I'm wondering, like, how do you do it? So I come from door-to-door marketing. So it's the worst market. Like, you literally have to knock on people's doors and like harass them to buy your product. I hated that. So I went into very much cold, warm sales intro approach, where it's like, okay, I'm going to introduce myself to someone, just be like, hey, how's it going? And if they say, hey, back, okay, there's some sort of interest. You have to get their interest level size. Like, there's like an interest pyramid. There's like low, medium, high. And then the low and medium is where they don't really know you. And then the high is like where they're like warming up to you. So you want to raise the interest as high as possible before you even introduce what you do. Mm-hmm. So by doing that, you're like, okay, hi, how's it going? My name is X, and I really like your post on Y. okay, you always want to compliment the other person because as human beings, we're naturally egocentric. Like we want to know more about, like we're self-serving naturally. Like that's how we work. That's how we've always worked with psychology. And then you give a compliment, they give it back to you or they accept it. And then you start a warm conversation and then they'll be like, okay, so what do you do? LinkedIn is the best because you can optimize your profile to literally tell people exactly what you do within the first 5 seconds. So the longer you stay in that warmish conversation, the longer chance you have of them clicking on your profile, seeing what you do, and then maybe asking you again, like, oh, I see that you went to Paris last week on this networking event. How was it? My friend was there. And then you can actually get them to ask you the questions that you want them to ask them. So it's actually, you just have to understand how, what triggers work for each person. It's a long process, but the more you do it, the more you'll be able to like understand, okay, if I say this, then it might hint them to ask me about this. And then they can, ask me instead of me to them.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, me included, who started using the DMs as emails. And you just write an essay. I even have people sending me messages and they sign it off. And when you have that mentality, it prevents these type of conversations to happen. So I think if you start off with an email vibe, you're not going to get a conversation.
I hate emails.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, with a passion, with voice notes as well.
Voice notes as well.
Yeah,
everything is just don't talk to me.
Yeah, the lowercase texting. You mentioned warm conversations there. So especially if you were just starting on LinkedIn, I've had a few people talk to me and said, "Oh, seeing you posting on LinkedIn, I really wanted to start, but the starting is really difficult for them because they feel like they need to reach a certain level of quality." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to start a podcast, but only when I get an amazing camera." I'm like, "You can just record a Teams call." So I wonder if I know you have. So when you have someone who's trying to start LinkedIn and they just need that little push, like it's going to be okay kind of thing, like what do you tell that person?
I think I always refer back to the gym analogy. Like we both go to the gym and I think it's just very similar to business. Like when you start going to the gym, you don't need the best outfits, you don't need the best shoes, you don't need the best gym membership even. You just need to go. It's the same, like going to the gym in a $20 gym versus a $200 gym is the same thing. Like you do exactly the same thing. It's just like different levels. It's the same with business or in starting anything on LinkedIn, your brand, anything. You're just the moment you start thinking, oh, I need to get this and that, you're actually just procrastinating and being over perfectionist, which is also a form of procrastination. So you don't really need anything. You just need to start. The more reps you get, the more you're able to be like, okay, now I can gift myself the mic or the camera and stuff. Just see them as like levels, but no one started off with the perfect studio or anything. They just started with what they had. And actually, if you just start with what you have, you reduce friction at the like as you go on, and then it's better for you. So just do it.
Just do it, as Nike say.
Although I think just post is really bad advice. Like don't just post something just to post it. Do your research, do your due diligence with stuff. Like if you're gonna start a LinkedIn account, at least spend 30 minutes for like the next 2 weeks understanding the platform, understanding your own values, understanding what you want to post about, and being like, okay, this person is the best at this. I should be able to at least mimic at a 5% rate what they're doing, so I can already start doing it well. Because if you just post just to post because everybody's telling you to post on LinkedIn, then it's just not going to work for you because you're doing it wrong, and then you're not actually putting in enough thought for you to succeed in the long term.
Yeah. I'm looking at my journey the last 6 months because I joined your cohort and it was a banging cohort. I had a good time. I'm still having a good time. And you had an exercise in there where you look at people in your niche and try to see what you like, see what you don't like, and then put that into a content. And when I had that direct instruction and I went and did that, I was like, whoa, because it makes sense, but you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes LinkedIn isn't like other platforms. Like if you're not looking for something and if you just don't engage with the post, you might stay in your bubble of your colleagues, your 50 connections. So I think that advice just to go out and see what's out there, I think you can get so much inspiration, and using that mute button and the unfollow button and just making sure that you have that feed of people you like. I think that helps with the inspiration a lot.
Yeah, my best, advice for everything is try and find inspiration everywhere you go. I was in Canada last week and one of my friends took me to a comedy show, and then we came back home and he immediately started writing posts on the comedy show, and I was like, what? And I just could see a new level of how people find inspiration from like everything around. You can view social media as two ways, like, oh, everything's so bad and negative, I hate it here. Everyone's like virtue signaling on LinkedIn and it's like all fake. Or you could be like, oh, this is super interesting, I want to be inspired by this post and write something similar. So it's like, just change your mindset to something that's consistently given to you rather than taking away.
I want to take this to more the employer branding side. So there's some people I've spoken to who they would like to post on LinkedIn, but they're afraid, not necessarily because someone's told them, but they're afraid of what their boss would think, their company would think. So these are people who are successful. They have stuff to talk about, but they just don't want to, at fear of that they might annoy someone. They might say something they shouldn't. Like, have you come across that before? Like,
yeah, a lot of people in the cohort were like that. Like, even so, we have that, and I say two things. Like, your job is like, if you can't, if that's your main source of income, I wouldn't recommend anyone to do anything that could compromise that and hurt them. But also, most jobs would be fine with you kind of like showcasing your experience, because at the end of the day, companies want to build their own brands. So personal branding for business is actually growing so much now. And I feel like when you go and speak to your manager and be like, hey, can I post about this and this? And they'll be like, yeah, just don't talk about that. Then you'll be able to actually do it. And I recommend it the most because it's also your safety net for when that job eventually either doesn't work out for you or they fire you, which there's like so many layoffs lately. So I think it's just the best backup plan to build your own personal brand while you're getting paid. And then you can actually manage to turn into like your thing. Like, we have one person in our cohort, I won't say her name, but she's building her personal brand while working, and she got marketing to actually support her building her personal brand, which is so smart. And now by the time she ever decides to leave, she's already getting like deals, like sponsored deals, which is amazing. So she's already building that side hustle within her job without even quitting. So that's the best way to actually build a brand while at work.
Yeah, for sure. I see a lot in my industry. I work in the games industry, specifically recruitment. And when the layoffs were happening, there was like tens of thousands. And there's a stat like there's 140,000 recruiters in America open to work right now. There's only 5,000 jobs. And what I've noticed when I see them making their open to work post, the people that tend to get the jobs the quickest are the ones who happen to have personal brands. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned personal stories and how they're very impactful. I feel like I remember you saying like you have a personal brand, but you won't be posting your personal diary.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn.
Ooh.
So on LinkedIn, how do you not blur the lines? Especially for the people who have a job in the moment. Like, that's where I feel there would be some fear. Like, maybe I've shared a story where I shouldn't have. Maybe it's a bit too personal. Like, what's the difference?
The moment you ask yourself, is this a bit too personal? Then you know that it was a bit too personal. Because usually we have boundaries. Everyone has their different boundaries. Like, I am more vulnerable in person than I am online. That's just normally who I am. But you have to know, okay, what is my personal brand about? Like, okay, marketing, entrepreneurship, and copywriting. Okay, am I posting about something that's related to that? Yes or no? Is this personal story related to entrepreneurship? Yes. Okay, to what extent? Am I sharing about my mental health issues because I'm trying to shine a light on entrepreneurship, or am I trying to just get attention? This is usually where people go wrong. I've had so many clients that message me after posting a post like, is this too much? And the moment someone's asking you, is this too much? And it's probably, yes, it was too much for you. It might not be enough. It might not be a lot for me, but if you're nervous about it, then most likely you're overstepping your own boundary just because someone else did it. I have this a lot where people talk about burnout, for example, and it gets like 1 million likes because that's just the culture on LinkedIn where burnout on these posts will get a lot of traction because a lot of people struggle with this. Someone will post a post very similar to that based on that template they saw, and they'll regret it because it's just not something they would have shared naturally. So it's not about not sharing enough about you. It's just knowing how comfortable you are with sharing things. That is a boundary. But usually, like, it's a professional platform. Just, bear that in mind.
Yeah, keep it professional. I think the example you used with the comedy show, like that's a personal story, but you're not a comedian likely on LinkedIn, but I think you give us that good advice where you connect the personal story to what you do at the end.
Yeah.
So it could be even 80% of the post. I did that recently from one of your challenges where I talked about me going on stage in Athens, but then I connected it to being on a podcast because it's a public thing.
Yeah, as long as you're able to like sort of give value back. So stories are incredibly important for content. As I always say, people learn better when you're telling them a story, but then when you're just giving them facts. And when you're like storytelling through a problem, they're more likely to remember you. But the problem is people will go on tangents in that story. So like in the comedy show, they'll talk about like what the person was wearing and the other comedians, and they'll never actually arrive to like the climax of the story, which is like where you actually meant to kind of like introduce the solution or the problem or like the actionable advice. Whether like if I was in a comedy show, my friend is like, oh yeah, I was in a comedy show last week and they talked about Tinder for swiping, and I thought it was the same about algorithms because this is how we usually swipe on LinkedIn and blah blah. So then he tied it up together. Then conclusion is the same thing. So definitely always, make it a point to come back to where you started, which is your personal brand.
Yeah. Which I think actually helps with the blank page syndrome. If you know that everything will come back to these three things you talk about, so to speak, I feel like the guardrails actually help you because you're not going to write about anything today.
Yeah. For me, it was so important to sort of know, okay, I have these three things and I have all these stories that I can share. How can I tie everything back to writing, entrepreneurship, blah, blah. And then it makes it simple to not go about writing. Like LinkedIn has like a word character, it was like 2,000 words. I would usually go over it because I was trying to over explain everything. And then I realized, no, that's not how either you or me or anyone consumes content. Like we read a post for 3 seconds and swipe. Okay, so you need to optimize those 3 seconds to problem solution, hook, activate their attention and then captivate them and then retain them. How can you do that? By keeping it to one simple thing.
Yeah, and I can't second that point enough. I feel like when you told me that's not how I consume content, I just looked at my post. I was like, yeah, I would not sit here and look at this. And then I think about the post I did read, and it's like, oh, there's a picture that's got my attention. And then I read the first line, second line, and then only then and then again, there was enough white space where I didn't feel like I'm making a massive commitment reading this. Then you go to another post where it's like an essay, but it might be good content. It's just I'm not there for that. I didn't click.
Yeah, self-awareness is massive. I think a lot of us lack it because I don't know if it's an ego thing where we feel like, okay, what I'm writing about is the best thing ever. Yeah. And I go, oh, everybody's going to be so interested. And then you go back and you're like, actually, no, it's not. And then I feel like for me, because I've been consuming content for so long, I sort of understand how other people's brains work and how I like to consume content and how other people consume content. I have this very specific rule for myself that I don't create content that I wouldn't consume, and hence why we're here today live on a podcast rather than online, because I don't consume online podcasts on Zoom because I just hate the difference in sounds between one person's mic and the other one. So that's why I just don't do that either. I didn't do video for a very long time because I wasn't consuming video on LinkedIn, so I wasn't producing it. It's the same thing. So you just have to understand, okay, if I wouldn't consume content like this, why am I giving people content that I wouldn't consume myself? And then you kind of just get better and become more self-analytical, which is the best skill you could have as a creator, because then you sort of raise the bar to something that, okay, you're competing against your favorite creators, which is essentially why you're on social media to do. You want to create the content that inspired you to create content in the first place. Yeah.
Before I touch into video, because I wanted to ask you about that because that's a recent change. And I remember you saying video is trash on LinkedIn, like not even that long ago. And then here we are now, we've got YouTube videos coming out. But before I go there, I want to touch on the example of the CEO type, because you coach those type of people, and that's kind of that's like a very specific thing that they're posting for. It's not necessarily for a job. It's more for authority, getting more B2B deals. I'm curious, does that change what you post? I want to give an example here. Like most of your posts start with me, my, I. You're talking about me. I wonder, does that change when you're like a front face of a company? Do you pivot? It's less about your story, or is it still all about me?
It depends. It's usually a combination of like both. So it's like I and then we. And then it's a lot of you. So I had this really, really cool CEO person, and a lot of his content would be a lot about the we in the company rather than the I. But then when it came to personal achievements, we'll like make it a point to talk about him. But when it came to building company culture, like we had his pillars. Obviously, it was entrepreneurship, leadership, and the specific business that he was in. So then when it came to entrepreneurship, be like, oh, I was burnt out last week. 9 years ago, I struggled with burnout. This is what I did. This is what happened. That's his personal. So it's like an I. And then we as company did this and this, and this is how we build amazing company culture. This is how you can do it too. So we always related back to the we and then the you in the post. So like whoever in the team was able to feel connected with the post because it was a we, and then giving back in the you in the middle of the post. So people who were learning from him felt like, okay, he's also talking about me, and this is how we can implement his company culture onto our company culture. And then the other pillar, which was about like everything else, like so he either got an award or like the company, or he wanted to talk about his family, then it was like a mix of everything. So it's always a mix. Depends on you, but usually it's like every single brand, whether it's like a CEO of like a multi-million company or like a single person that just started their entrepreneurship journey, there should always be a decent mix, not just because it works, but also for them to try, okay, when I talk about me, this works like that. When I talk about, Stephen Bartlett, it works like this. So then you also get more testing done.
So in that example of the CEO, you mentioned they're making the posts. I'm wondering, because you said if it might resonate with some of the employees, I'm just thinking of the big picture now to like maximize that kind of impact. The comment section is very important on LinkedIn. Is that CEO also commenting on other posts, or is he just posting, engaging with his own comments, or does he go out there and like?
So this is actually a big question. It depends on the CEO. It depends of like, there's so many types of archetypes of CEOs and people's, I don't know how to say like styles. So like, there's like the very friendly CEO who like always like if you see them out in the street, they'll say hi.
Approachable.
Yeah, approachable. And then there's the CEO that's like very introverted and doesn't want to talk to anyone. So when we're doing the strategy for clients, we make it a point to be like, what is your usual style? Like, do you have an open door policy? If you have an open door policy at work, then you're more likely to be commenting on LinkedIn, like being like, oh, this is so great. But if you don't, then we're not going to force someone to be someone that they're not. Although we do encourage engagement, although like just to, increase brand awareness, like super important, especially online. But it'll vary because we'll have someone doing 30 minutes of engagement, someone doing 15 minutes of engagement. I'll be like, just please make it a point to engage with your employees at least, or your co-founder, so they can like see that your account is active and you're not posting and ghosting, or at least reply to your comments. That's the least you can do. So because you're building reciprocity, and reciprocity is super important to building connections and network and marketing and just influence overall. So if you're an introverted CEO or someone that just doesn't really talk to people, just say thank you to people that are commenting on your content. But then if you're like an extroverted man of the people CEO, then comment everywhere all day, every day, please.
Yeah, like more comments, the better, as long as they value, I'm sure.
More visibility.
But you don't want to force it from the sound of it.
No, it just depends. Obviously, we want them to comment as much as possible to increase their visibility. But if it's not them, then that's fine.
Fair enough. I wonder, is there a type of post which is like really effective specifically for like B2B deals? So like business to business deals, or like anything that was like, ooh, that builds authority.
Yes, so case studies always will trump anything else when it comes to authority, just because there's nothing that will trump your case study. Like you're giving them proof, you're giving the outline of what you did, and then the solution that you gave, and how it started and how it ended from point A to point B. I love seeing SEO case studies because like we took this company from 0 page web visits to 100 million in 2 months. Like that's crazy. No one can say you didn't because you're literally showing proof. It's the same thing with B2B. Testimonials always work as well. People love video testimonials on LinkedIn for some reason, even though I always say that video sucks on LinkedIn. But it just depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to get more clients, then stuff like that always works. But it's that type of content is the least performing content on LinkedIn, which is like the case study, the testimonials, and stuff.
Because you say video sucks, and I've noticed my videos tend to get less impressions, but they're the only post that people mention to me on a call. So I feel like the impact is a lot higher.
Yeah.
And I have a personal story. Like, I only joined your cohort because of a LinkedIn Live. When you say the impressions on that might have been a couple thousand, or the actual attendees might have been a few hundred. So a few hundred people, when you're looking at a 10K, 20K impressions, that looks like a lot less. But the conversion, I think, is super important. And it's something to remember. Like, if you're doing a text and image post and it feels good, you get the 100 likes, but then you do a video post, but then that's the one that actually resonates, then does video suck? So I wonder, why did you actually change your mind in the end? So why are you posting video now?
Exactly that. After doing the first round of the cohort, I realized that about 80% of people converted through video.
80%? Wow, that's 62%.
Massive. Yeah, it's crazy. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe we should do more of these. And then I didn't actually switch to video until I was prepping for round 2 of the cohort. Then I went really hard on video because I knew that I would convert more, and it ended up doing exactly that. So I understand, like, the fact is video is the least well performing content on the
When
platform.
you say least performing, you mean impressions?
Impressions wise, like, if you're trying to grow your account, don't use video. Like, it just won't grow your account, but it will grow your authority. That is authority building content. Is the same with case studies and testimonials. It won't get you the views, but it will get you the brand loyalty that people are looking for. So therefore, like, when you're building a good content, like, well-rounded approach, you go top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, videos, middle to bottom of funnel, because if someone doesn't know your face, they won't click on your video to listen to it unless there's like a really good hook. But on LinkedIn, because people are looking on LinkedIn on their phones at work and it's silent, the chances of you hooking someone that doesn't know you are very low. So my core audience are the ones who are viewing my videos, and therefore, like, the interest level is high, and then their conversion level is even higher because they already know me. They wanted to know my expertise. You can't really fake your authority or like your tactical knowledge on video as you would on like a text post. So the conversion is naturally higher, and also a lot of people lack charisma on LinkedIn. So if you have a little bit of charisma, you're like onto a winner.
So how are you finding like YouTube, like personally?
Oh, I love YouTube. YouTube is my baby. I've always wanted to do YouTube. And I think the first cohort was like my trial run of how I would actually do video, because it was like a live video mastermind course where I was consistently teaching people live. And it just kind of prepped me to be able to educate on short form on video on YouTube. So I used a lot of the cohort, what I learned and how I communicate, and being able to, talk better on camera, use my hands, be very actionable in like very little amount of time. Then I was like, hey, I'm just gonna go for YouTube, and I did, and it's amazing. I love video. I've always been good at video. I started off on video platforms like TikTok and Instagram, so now it's like coming back like full circle, and I'm able to provide back to people. It's really cool.
I feel like we don't talk about this enough. So you mentioned in a podcast that Instagram put you in a box because it was about your looks. Mm-hmm. But then you've said in today's podcast that when we're scrolling, we see a picture and then that stops us to look at it. So from the sound of it, having a eye-stopping, like a show-stopping picture is still very important on LinkedIn. But what's the difference? Like, why is that putting you in a box on Instagram, and why is that not putting you in a box on LinkedIn?
The picture you see on LinkedIn will differ to the picture you see on Instagram. On Instagram, it should be a photo of you. Usually, most of the time, it will be a selfie or like a good-looking photo. On LinkedIn, it could be a text photo within the text thing. There's like always like a Twitter screenshot of like a quote that stops you enough to read it, or it's like an infographic. It's like education heavy, whether on Instagram is very much vanity driven metrics, whereas on LinkedIn is like educational value heavy. So when I started on LinkedIn, text content was still like popping off. Like you would get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 likes just through text content, which is what took me out of that box and makes you actually kind of turn your thoughts into written content that's actionable, that works for someone, that captures people's attention, that retains them, etc. So I think you're right, it puts you on a different box, but you're able to kind of escape whatever, vain idea that you have about social media, and like LinkedIn just turns it into value based, which is more important to me.
Yeah.
But obviously people do leverage a lot of selfies on LinkedIn, which is perfectly understandable.
I think you mentioned once where you had a post that did well and you tested the same post without the picture and it didn't do as well.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to sense check yourself, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm growing a lot on LinkedIn and I was leveraging selfies, as we all do. You've done it.
I've done it so
It's
much.
a hack. Because on LinkedIn, there's like 1 billion users. Only 3% of people are actually posting content. So if you think about the people looking at the content, a lot of people will tend to like just stop and be like, oh, this person's good looking. I'm going to stare at it for a little bit longer and like just keep on moving because it's something you don't see on LinkedIn. So leveraging that makes sense. If you're like just new on the platform, you're like trying to grow hack. Like that's completely understandable. I did it. And I was like, okay, I'm growing but I think, and I recognize that I think I'm overly leveraging myself. So is my content good or are just the selfies even better than the content? So I tested it out. It was like, okay, this is not working. So if I force myself, I put myself outside my comfort zone, I improved my writing skills. I got writing coaches. I work with Jasmine Alec closely to improve my writing and my content pillars. And then eventually I started getting better just through written content. And then once that I started adding photos back once a week, the post would do even better because it was like a 2-for-1 rather than just a 1 and a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think it's balance again. Like it's an education platform. And if I am going to use a picture of myself, I always either put a speech bubble or it's like the hook is very clear related to the picture, right? So I think if you're leading with the education in the hook before they even click see more, I think that's the nice way of doing the balance.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned Luke and Jasmine today, and they were on that LinkedIn Live that I watched with you. So I'm wondering, because you met them through LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I saw on your Twitter, they actually helped you with your launch as well.
Yeah.
So how is that relationship going? Like you're building the cohort together and it sounds like you're very close together. I know you have a WhatsApp group together. So like, can you tell me more about that relationship?
Well, it started off, me and Jasmine were very close already before looking into the picture. Jasmine and I would talk a lot on phone, like just because Jasmine is just naturally kind of like that. And he, for some reason, gave me his time. I don't know why.
I think we're going to get into that. I think there's a reason.
I don't know why. Like this was like a year ago and he was like, yeah, I'll chat to her. And then I introduced, well, they kind of like, Luke was like, been going off the rails somewhere. I'm like going last year. And then we kind of just all became friends through a trip in Bosnia. And the relationship just naturally evolved into like a very supportive group of like, oh, I'm going to send you guys my post. Do you want to roast it? Jasmine would do this to me. He would send me his post before posting them just to check if he was like, I don't know. He would just send them to me. I had no criticism to
Perfect.
And I would send him my post and be like, no, change this. And I was like, okay. I think he would just send me his post just to like
just so there's a trade.
Just for me to think that I was doing something to contribute to like our friendship, but I had zero contribution. And that's fine. And then we started doing that with Luke as well. Like I put them all in a group chat when we went to Bosnia, and then that group chat just never seemed to die, and it's still going, and it's amazing. And with the launch, the first launch, Jasmine, my website wasn't ready. Like it was like 24 hours before we launched, and the website was absolutely horrible. And then Jasmine was like, I'll build you a brand new website, and he did within 12 hours of launching. And he did it selflessly. Like he didn't ask for any money. He didn't ask for anything. I was like, do you guys want to cut off the cord? They were like, no. So I feel like I'm very lucky to have them in my life, for sure.
For sure. And I think you're basically competitors in a weird way as well,
yeah.
Which I think is super cool because I've always had that in my life. Like in a previous life, I had a group together where we were doing like betting tips. And technically, if I shared a tip with you, it would hurt me, but because everyone was doing it, we rose together.
Yeah, I feel like there's this quote I saw, it's really cool. It's like people at the top are collaborating, not competing with each other. And it's the same thing, like if someone wants to work with Jasmine, then they should go and work with Jasmine. Like I'm not gonna beg them to stay with me. Like there's enough people to work with everyone. Like the pool is so big. Like we only need like 5 to 10 clients per month to, hit our revenue goals or whatever.
Life-changing money at 5 to 10 clients.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like we don't need to be competing with everyone. Like we all have our individual things that make us unique, and whoever wants to work with us, they can. And we're consistently learning from each other. And the cohort provides them a bigger, like more loyal base for them to actually get more clients, and same with us. So like my success benefits them, their success benefits me. So ideally, the more successful all of us get, the better for everyone is. For like, it's the better result. So there's just no debating that.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen that more in recruitment. I've tried to have that where I'm having an e-coffee with complete competitor effectively. But then she shares a tip about finding candidates. And I was like, wow, I'd never thought of it like that before. And then I talked about like LinkedIn Lives and how they've been useful for us. And just not knowing what you don't know, having those conversations with competitors helps so much. I've just thought now that I've said it, LinkedIn Lives. What is your plan with LinkedIn Lives? Because I want to dive in quite heavily with it. So I was wondering, because you've used them successfully. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a case study. So I'm wondering, do you have any strats?
I had like an addiction to webinars and LinkedIn Lives during launch. Like I literally was doing one a day. It became,
One a day?
Yeah,
Wow.
It became 2 a day for like
Worse
the last 2
addictions.
days. It became addictive just because, again, if you have a little bit of charisma on a platform that's very professional, people are just naturally gravitating towards you. It's the same with salespeople on like car dealerships. Like you're naturally drawn to the most charismatic like a salesman, just because they give you that vibe. It's the same online. And when you understand what your leverages are, my unfair advantage and yours is just like we're really naturally charismatic. So like understanding that, and I'm like, okay, if I'm a little bit funny, I kind of know what I'm doing, and I have a good offer, the conversion is higher because people just like you, and then they like what you're selling, they like what you're talking about, and then you can easily convert, and it's just like so addictive, and I love it. You can also, there's things that people don't see on text content, like let's say I just make a lot of jokes and I smile a lot. People that don't know, like that only follow my content, think that I'm just...
Because your profile picture is that. Like, there she is. That's your profile picture.
Just like this. And then they see me talk and they're like, oh my gosh, she actually smiles. And then she's actually funny and she laughs a lot. I'm like, yeah, that's just naturally me. So it's just like you're breaking the pattern of like what they think of you. And they're like, oh no, oh my God, this is even so much more than what I thought. And they're like, okay, take my money. Or like, oh, I'm a massive loyal fan now. So you're increasing brand loyalty and you're increasing conversions just simply by showing up online. So it's something like, you're letting yourself down if you don't do it, if you can.
Yeah.
But if you're if you're not good at video, don't put yourself in that position. A lot of people convert very well newsletter. I don't, just because I like newsletters to be really chilled, and I rather just do it on video. But if your skill set is more like typing away, then do that. So just knowing what your leverages are. Everybody has like an unfair advantage. You just need to find it.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that point where you said you don't have to do everything, even if it works. And that point you just made, you have one of the biggest newsletters, I think, for like LinkedIn, like over 10,000, right? Crazy. And even if you're not converting on the newsletter, you can point them to a live that will convert. So
yeah,
you can always, I think, just make it your own, like your own process.
Yeah, and it's also like how you're funneling people through the point of personal branding is to build a community that will eventually buy from you regardless of like whether you're pushing them to buy or not. Like you're building those long-term relationships and you don't want to burn it. So for me, funneling from my LinkedIn post that's not selling to my newsletter that's also not selling to then a live webinar that the people that like there's like I have over 100,000 people following me, then there's like 2,000 people liking my posts, and there's like 300,000 impressions. So then from that, then if I funnel them to my newsletter, that's like what 5%, 10% conversion. Then they're like the level of interest is rising, but the people are like there's less people there's less people, but the interest is higher. And then once I get them onto a newsletter, which is again more value for free, and then they get funneled onto the live, then the level of interest is way higher, which means that you can pitch without feeling guilty of burning your audience, which is something I've learned throughout the years, that you don't want to consistently be selling, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. There's like depends on what you are, but I just want to build community instead of like sales. So that's what I'm going for.
It sounds like there's a difference between following and community. I think you've said that. I've just said it as if I've said that. So you've said that before. Like you can build a following or you can build a community, and you've mentioned community a few times. So what's the difference of a following and a community?
Well, following is people just like click follow. There's so many accounts out there where there's like, oh, cookie cutter advice, work hard, play hard, like follow. It's like feel good quotes where like they're consistently there's accounts on Instagram, which you and I probably follow, which is like David Goggins advice, Andrew Huberman advice, Atomic Habits advice. And it's like consistently feel good content that's just giving you, dopamine hits, but you can't remember what the account name is. If you tried, that is a following. That's building a following. Those accounts have like millions and millions and millions of followers, but there's no reason to remember them for who they are. There's no brand building. When you're building a community, it's people that literally know your story. Like, a lot of, like, you follow my newsletter, you follow my Twitter, you follow everything. You're giving me quotes that I kind of forgot that I said. And that is community building someone that's, their interest is so high in you that they want to know you everywhere. And they follow you on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, because that's what community is. You're building friendships, like fans, like loyal people that, care for you rather than just someone that wants to click like and feel good. Like, I actually care about your story. I relate to your story a lot. A reason why people build very powerful personal brands is because they're consistently storytelling in ways that like more than one person will connect. So I talk a lot about mental health or like entrepreneurship or about growing up and traveling. A lot of people will connect to either of those three things. So then you're consistently giving people some way of like relating, and naturally people buy from people they like or they are alike. So then you're providing them with that like kind of like line of contact that a lot of other brands miss.
I want to bring this back to, you mentioned a very important thing there, like building that community. It's like, I feel like those content that gives you that big following might take less effort, and get more impressions relative to what it takes to build the community. But if you want the impact, you need to build that community. And I want to take this back to the example where we started the podcast, where if someone's looking for a job, I feel like because it's logistically speaking, you're going to see the more popular posts on LinkedIn, but that doesn't mean there's loads of other posts with 10 or 20 likes that are making real impact that could get a job. So if you're posting with the intent of building relationships and community, you might get less impressions and be less successful, but the impact will be higher. So I think that's an important thing, where if you're posting, because I've had this myself where I've posted something and it doesn't do well, but then I get a message about it, and it makes me remember that LinkedIn's kind of overpowered in that all the other platforms, Twitter, YouTube, like when you see a viewer, you technically don't see their name. The same thing with an impression, you don't see them, but it's weird because that's a real person, because literally everyone has to upload a CV and there's very few duplicate accounts. It's like when they were saying they're going to force everyone to verify on Twitter, I feel like LinkedIn already has that. Like pretty much everyone's a real person, and also they can't really be rude because they might lose their job. And it's just so good because you might get a fraction of the reach you get on another platform, but you're reaching real people. And if you're having conversations in the comments on a networking platform, it's just the impact you get is massive.
Yeah, for me, most likely lately, people will comment on a comment that I made rather than the post itself, because we live in like this economy where information has become a commodity. So everybody knows how to grow on LinkedIn. Everybody knows all the tips. Everybody knows all the copywriting tips.
It's not actually true, by the way. I have so many conversations and I mention hooks and they're like, what?
But for me, what happens is that, we already know that we have to have content pillars. Like they already kind of like feel like they know. So they're looking for that extra piece of value, which is the personality aspect, where it's like, okay. Because on LinkedIn, there's like an oversaturation of how to grow on LinkedIn content, how to do this, how to do that, productivity tips, 10 TED Talks that will change your life. Like everybody has seen that and they feel like they've already seen them. So if you're able to provide them with that extra, like, by the way, I just ran a marathon. Yeah. They're like, wow, I just ran a marathon too. And like that connection point just elevates your status as a person that's providing value, that's good. And that's also human, doing human things, very relatable day-to-day things like, I just met this person. It's just a lot more relatable and people just want to comment on that. Because right now, and after the pandemic, I realized, and there's like a lot of studies showing that people are in deep search of community and connection, because the pandemic took that away from a lot of us, where people went from working in an office to working remotely, and they haven't actually gone back to the office at all. So people are like just lacking that sense of community that they would have had in the workplace. So the more you make your LinkedIn feel like that day-to-day interaction that someone would have in the office, the better for you. Everybody wants to feel like they are being recognized, loved, and like there's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, where there's like the one at the bottom is like love and belonging. People want to know, like people want to feel that, and you have to be providing that consistently with your content to build a community and a personal brand that's consistently excelling all the other ones, which is why you'll see my friends Jasmine, Luke, and even myself kind of like out-competing other accounts that are consistently providing mega viral content. But like if you look at the recognition is very different. Like the way people perceive one of them and the other, it's very different.
It's almost like you feel like colleagues. That's the vibe I got. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to have that in my content, and it's worked so well, where we hop on an e-coffee and it's like, we've been talking online from the comments for a couple months. We went through a similar thing, I feel. I feel like I'm going through your pandemic experience, because you mentioned going remote in a previous podcast and just doing e-coffees after e-coffees. And since I've moved back to Cyprus in December, I've basically lost the office. I'm like, this is quiet. This is so quiet. So I was doing as many e-coffees as I could. And
you're having fun.
Having fun.
Meeting people.
Changed my life. And I want to talk for the person who hasn't really done e-coffees, or done one or two. And you've said this twice now, where you go on a call and I don't know why they liked me, but then they give you all these attention. And I feel like we should break down potentially like what makes a good e-coffee for you. Let's say from the receiving end, like when you have an e-coffee with someone, what makes you want, I want to talk to this person again?
Yeah, so the main, I say I don't know, but like I studied
being
a lot.
humble.
I don't know still. Like I don't know why Jasmine like talked to me. I don't know why Richard Moore, my mentor, talked to me. But one thing I do know is that I did a lot of work internally for psychology. So I read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And to make a good conversation, and like the 41 laws of power, the first one is like never overshadow the master, I think. You have to make the person feel important in this era where everybody's literally all in about themselves. Like social media it's again a very selfish platform where you're consistently talking about yourself, most likely. So the moment you're able to make someone feel like they are the center of attention rather than yourself, they'll like you more, because the level of intention of you is higher. So every single time I go into the conversations with anyone, I try to make them feel like I'm actively listening. I'm actively asking questions. I'm actively trying to get them to talk about themselves to me rather than me to them. So I'm not overpowering. And that feels nice, because in their day-to-day, you don't know if it's them on the other side of the coin where they are consistently asking the questions and not being recognized. So you want to make them feel important. You want to make them feel listened to, and you want to make them feel like you're actually taking in what they're saying. So with my mentor, I did that, and I was like consistently asking him questions about him, not me. He'll ask me questions, so I'll answer back, but then I'll literally point back to him immediately. And then he gave me some advice at the end. I immediately applied it. He wanted another call the next day or like next month, because he saw that I wasn't just interested, but I was also actively acting on his advice, which it's important for people because they don't want to feel like they wasted their time. So it's those things. So read How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, for sure. I think the physical equivalent of this is like going to a networking event and collecting business cards.
Yes.
And not following up. Mm-hmm. But when in the virtual world, I feel like what you've just demonstrated there very nicely is the asking the questions about them and then relating it to yourself. Like you could ask questions like, how do I grow on LinkedIn? Like generic things you could ask Google, but when you're asking how they done it or their journey, and then you relate to yourself, and then you, like you said, put it into practice. I feel like everyone wants to be a mentor. I think very few people don't. And if you're the perfect mentee from the first 15, 20 minutes, why wouldn't they want to talk to you?
Yeah.
So rather than chasing the fact that you're having an e-coffee, and that's the win, that's not the win. The win is, do you get a second one? Or like you had a funny tweet, like your love language is a recurring calendar invite.
Yeah,
so you're like,
I love that.
Yeah, so that's a big thing in recruitment as well. Like if you build a relationship where they want to have a recurring calendar invite with you, you build that trust. And that won't happen from DMs typically. Like, you're going to have that conversation, talk about that.
Yeah, I agree. So the thing is just to keep on asking questions. There's also like a sales tactic. Like it's I read it on Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And it's like when you're talking to me and I pick up on keywords that you just said, and then I say them back to you, you're more likely to be paying attention to me and like me because you think naturally, because I'm saying what you're saying, then that we're like very similar. And then that it's like a cognitive bias where I'm creating that sense of trust, liked and being like, remembered. And then when we end this conversation, if I was like trying to sell to you, you remember me positively rather than negatively. And then you're more likely to follow up on like, hey, are we going to do this again? So just think about what you're saying, think about your level of interest, and think about them, not you.
For sure. And I think some people forget as well how much they can help people who are mentors in the space. Mm-hmm. Like, I had a conversation recently with my mentor, Jacob Peggs, and for example, he didn't know what a LinkedIn Live was. And I was like, what? And we had a whole conversation about it, and it blew my mind. And sometimes you don't know, like you could potentially see a typo on a website, for example, like going into a call and not necessarily thinking me. Like if you can give a little, it makes all the difference. I follow you on Twitter. I don't engage because then that would be ruining the surprise, I guess. So I want to bring up your Twitter. I'm going to read some tweets to you because you have some funny tweets and I want to hear the context. All right, here we go. I don't know if I believe this tweet. I read 52 books in 52 weeks. Did you actually read it? Yeah? This
was like 2 years ago, though. It wasn't recent. I was during the pandemic when I was trying to kind of like grow, and I set myself the challenge of reading 52 books in 52 weeks. I didn't have anything to do. I was so bored during the pandemic, so I was like, I might as well just try this thing. And I did read them.
Nice. And you didn't just read them. You did e-coffees as well, and you started your LinkedIn journey. Like, when you said I had nothing to do, you made use of that time.
I mean, yeah, it was a pandemic. I was unemployed. I was like, 20, 21, 22 at the time. I was looking for either university experiences, and I was at home in my childhood bedroom, and I was like, I saw this as my unfair advantage. The entire world had stopped. I didn't have any FOMO because my friends weren't going out in London. So I was like, I'm going to take this as a sign that I can get ahead without feeling like I'm missing out. And I'm going to try and do this as like at the highest speed as I can. Mm-hmm. So I set myself the goal of doing those like 52 books in 52 weeks. This was even before I went onto LinkedIn. I think it was like midway through the year where I actually started LinkedIn. And then I put those books that I already read into action, and then actually saying to people, I'm reading 52 books in 52 weeks at the start of the coffee conversations. It actually increased the level of interest from people that were interested in me because they saw, okay, she's into it. So it then added that extra layer of like, I should be doing this because I'm telling people that I'm doing this. It's making me more interesting. And when you find a book that two people have read, like in a conversation, you can talk about it. It actually increases your chances of them liking you. So it was a win-win overall. So yeah, I read them.
Yeah, amazing. And she released a video talking about the top 5. And I think you pointed something out there, like you can connect with someone over a book you read, but I feel like you also, without even, you're not saying it explicitly, but by saying I'm reading 52 books in 52 years, you're showing what type of person you are, your commitment. 52 weeks. Thank you. You're showing how committed you are, right? Yeah,
commitment is a big thing. It's like when I learned this from my mentor, Richard Moore. He would always kind of show off he will show me his Strava thingy. He's like, oh, I just rode 100 kilometers, and I'll be like, okay, that's cool. Then consistently he'll do it, and I'm like, okay, this guy is really committed to this thing. And it just shows people that you're interested, you're dedicated, and then you're like smashing them on something that they're not doing. And it just consistently like elevates you again on like, okay, they're running a business, they have a full family, they're doing this thing, and they're doing this other thing. What can they not do? Because there's this thing called the halo effect, when it's usually the most usual example is like when people are pretty, you think that they're good at many different things. So like Harvey Specter from Suits. Have you seen Suits?
Yes.
So he's very handsome.
Man.
He's a very handsome man. So you automatically, without even knowing anything else,
That's a good lawyer right there.
yeah, you think he's a really good lawyer. You don't know. He might be. And then, he might be. He's definitely also a really good cook. 100%. He can make me breakfast. 100%. So then you're consistently thinking about all these other things. So when you find something that you're really good at, and people see it as a really good thing, then they'll assume that you're good at everything else. Yeah. So you consistently have to be showing things that you're good at so people can relate to them, because not everybody's going to find you attractive, but they might find you smart, or they might find you incredibly interesting. So you kind of like have to just overall kind of like round yourself up.
For sure. Like the gym is a great example that anyone can, if you show you're committed to the gym, it translates to the other stuff of your life. And I think being pretty as well is something like just like potentially putting in an effort in how you dress, grooming. I used to have the worst haircut of all time. And ever since I've had a normal haircut, the amount of time someone looks at me has gone up by like 50%.
Really?
Yeah. Like I've noticed the difference. I'm like, okay, so I wonder the effect that happens in business, where if you come in scraggly hair, but then you have an actual good haircut, like all these things add up.
This is a really cool thing that I learned. There was this girl that tried to pitch me LinkedIn services when I first started on LinkedIn. I went viral, and she was like, "Oh, you should join my program." And I was like, "It's like 5,000 for like coaching, and I don't really need it." But she gave me a really good piece of advice that I always carry with me. Is like, you need to look expensive, and it resonated because people judge you. Again, we're selfish people. We're like naturally narcissistic. So with LinkedIn, your profile picture needs to be the best you could look at, because it increases your chances of someone like what they think about you. So if you're naturally, I was a student, I was like laid back, didn't really pay attention to how I look. The moment I changed my profile picture to a professionally taken photo where I like just look more approachable, more professional, the type of people that were contacting me changed. So I went from people just sliding into my DMs because they thought I was good looking, and I got into would love to work with you to some extent. So you need to be very careful of like how you present yourself online. Naturally, just because you wanna give yourself the best entry point, you don't want to ruin that just because of your own ego. Oh, but I'm not naturally like that. Oh, but people should like me the way I am. Yes, okay, but then you're like letting yourself, like you're selling yourself short just because your own, oh, but people should love me because of this and that. Yes, they will, but you don't want to reduce your chances of signing your dream deal just because you love wearing tank tops and this during calls. Like, that's fine, but also give yourself the best chance you have.
Yeah, I think being yourself authentic in person, I feel like we can all agree, fair, but
I feel like it's an added bonus. Like when you saw me on live, you were like, oh, she's different. That's cool. Like, that's not what I expected her to be like. I expected her to be very serious. Now I really like her even more because she can give the information, and she's also entertaining enough for me to actually take a course from her. So it's like an added, like, look at your individual quirks as extra bonuses for someone that's already interested in you to be even more interested in.
Before I move on to the next tweet, I want to make the point about the profile picture. It doesn't have to be crazy professional. Like if you just have any modern phone and get a friend to take it, and the big part is you smiling.
Yeah.
Mind you, your picture is one of the few that don't smile, where you pull it off. So I think yours is...
I'm smiling.
You're smiling. Okay. Yeah, smiling. But if you have a photo and you're not smiling, just think about that first impression. Imagine if you were smiling, you might have a better first impression.
I actually had a different photo where it was like me looking like this.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And I had a chat with one of my best clients. He's a multi-7-figure exited CEO founder, and he was like, "Can I make a comment without you?" And I was like, "Oh, what's happening?" And he was like, "I, with the utmost respect to you, this photo looks very flossy." And I was like, "Oh." And then I automatically changed it just because I respected his opinion. And then everything changed for me, not just because I took his advice. So sometimes we have to listen to things that we naturally just don't want to listen to. And now I understand what he meant, because he was like a very cute photo that
Reminds me of a model.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to, on this professional platform specifically, I don't want to give that vibe. Maybe on Instagram I'll post it, and I think that's my Instagram profile pic. And it's like every platform has its different language naturally. So it's just like, if I'm on a professional platform, I want to be my most professional self. And then they can go on Instagram to find, okay, maybe she's not that much of a, professional person. She has a vibe, but on LinkedIn it's just like, I want to be that, so I can be treated as that, and I don't have to deal with the problems of like, oh, this person only wants to work with me because of the way I look like no.
For sure. And that person gave you the gift of feedback. I think everyone can ask 3 of their friends and say, what is your first impression when you see my profile in 3 seconds? I've had it happen. Again, someone gave me the gift of feedback. It's like, I came to your profile, I was like, I had no idea what you do. And I'm like, oh yeah, why would you? And when I'm in my own world, I'm like, of course, I'm a podcast host who does recruitment. I'm like, yeah, but you're asking too much for them to read that far down. So yeah, you might not have the gift of feedback. You can go and ask for it.
But then take it. Because a lot of people will give you feedback, but naturally we're like, oh no, they don't know what they're talking about.
I think they don't have all my like context, but like, that's the whole point. Most people don't.
Yeah.
So that is what matters.
Good.
Yes.
Let's go, Harry.
Yes. Another tweet. This is a funny one. Every time you send me a voice note, a puppy dies. Do you guys hate puppies? No. Stop sending me voice notes.
Yes. I hate voice notes. I think they're the utmost lack of respect sign if you don't know someone.
Okay, there's a bit of context there then. If you don't know someone.
Yeah, if you're my friend, please send me voice notes. Like, I want to hear your voice. But if I don't know you, if we haven't had any prior conversation, why are you forcing me to listen to a 2-minute voice note of you kind of like being like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out if you have some free time. Like, you're already asking me for something, like most likely if it's a voice note, you're kind of fumbling around. You're giving me a lot of extra context that I don't need to ask me for something that's in it for you. There's nothing in it for me. I just kind of like listen to you, a stranger, talk to me for 2 minutes. I don't know you and I'm scared. My content on LinkedIn is very like clear, straight to the point. There's no fluff. You ask, get, finish.
Every word fights for its life on your post. I can tell.
So it's the same with like how my day-to-day interactions are. Like, I don't want to know everything. Like, just ask me and I'll say yes or no. That's fine. And I don't want to stop my music to listen to your voice note.
That's a big thing, actually, especially if you're on the phone. Like, listen to a voice note on the phone isn't ordeal. Like, you have to.
And it's just not like a little friction. And I learned this from like one of like my CEO clients. Like, they said that sending as a stranger, sending someone that probably has no time in their day, a 2-minute voice note of you asking them for a coffee chat or like how they did something without giving them some value up front. It's like a sign of like no respect to their time. It's the same thing when you're like going on a coffee, like if you and I were going on a coffee break and I turn up 15 minutes late, that's me disrespecting your time. So it's the same with a voice note for me. If we are friends and we have like that rapport built, send me a voice note, of course. I'll listen to it 100%. But yeah.
Lovely. That makes sense.
Most voice notes online, they're usually pitches, by the way. That's why I say please don't send them to me, because I don't want to listen to a pitch. That's
funny. Because it's like an email on LinkedIn. You usually sell it. And I get sometimes if I send an email for a podcast invite, some people are confused because they're not used to an invite coming through an email. And I think the same thing with a voice note. If people are used to it being sales, then have that in mind. It's not a WhatsApp voice note. They're kind of different things. Lovely. How do you deal with the ups and downs? Because it hurts sometimes. I do a post, I put a lot of effort into it, no one sees it, and I'm like, And then another post, it does really well, and I feel really good, and I'm like, I don't want to be bound to the algorithm in terms of like my happiness, but you've had this in a lot bigger scale, so I wonder, how do you...
So I always reframe. Like, I'm a big fan of reframing the situation and like zooming out and seeing the vision. I learned this from like my crypto days. I tried to be a crypto influencer, it didn't work. But like, there's a lot of cool quotes that I found, and it's like one is like zoom out, see the vision when it came to crypto. And like, obviously, if you invest in crypto 100 years ago and versus now, and then the next year, like you'll be able to understand that like the market cycles, and there's like compounding. So it's the same with everything in life. And with me in content, I realized I'm writing posts on my computer in my room. They go viral and they make me money. 2 years ago, I had to wake up at 6 a.m. to go somewhere I didn't want to go, do door-to-door sales to sell a product that I didn't want to sell to people that I didn't like, using very dodgy tactics and hating my life every single day. My entire fitness routine went off, like, it was horrible. I was eating really bad because I was always outside. I was traveling consistently because we couldn't stay in one place, because when you're doing door to door, if you're consistently in one place, people will recognize you and your dodgy tactics. So they force you to move around. So then I'm like, I went from doing something I hated, being overweight and depressed, to something I really like that depends on me being able to nail a hook. I'm not gonna complain that much. Like, my life isn't that hard in comparison to the average person that's working a 9 to 5 that they hate. So when I kind of like make it obvious to myself, then it's like, okay, it's not that bad. Like, my current, low is not as low as my low 3 years ago. So I consistently just relate back to how privileged I am to be able to make a living online and consistently excel myself just by meeting people online. Like, one of my main things is like networking, getting to network with the right people, know them, and that's online. Like, I get to do everything from the comfort of my own home, and then I get to travel because I want to, not because I need to. So then it's just like that. That's how I deal with it. I'm like, okay, I'm privileged and I need to deal with this. Like, shut up. My grandpa worked in an oil like farming thing where he had to wake up and like consistently do that. So and now I just work on my computer. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. It's all relative.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. Man's Search for Meaning. That book really helped me.
Oh, I haven't read it.
You would love it.
Yeah.
It's that book. Whenever anything negative happens, I just think, okay, but is it as bad as that? No, it's literally impossible. Okay, I'll be okay. Because it was okay for a moment for them as well. I think everyone can have that kind of reflection and see, yes, this is hard, but it could be worse. And I think you can always keep going down. Doesn't matter where you are. Like, you can always compare it. It's going to be okay.
I think building a personal brand is the best thing you can do to kind of like keep that going, because when you're building a personal brand, it's about the opportunities that you're trying to get yourself into, but it's also the person who you become through personal branding. The Harry I met pre-cohort and the Harry I know now, you've changed a lot. Like, you've made a lot of friends. You're also very more focused on your health than like you were, at least, or like you look like.
Yeah, I've been training since.
But that's like, you develop one good habit, which is like, let's say it starts with posting a post every three times a week on LinkedIn. Then that's a habit. You stack it with going to the gym, then like every three times a week. Then you stack it with networking with high value entrepreneurs every single week. And then your habits start to change, because the mindset that you turn from not posting on LinkedIn, which is like really good for you because you're self-reflecting through writing, then you change it to, okay, now from this self-reflection, I'm able to talk about this self-reflection to someone else that's like a little bit better than me. And then you're growing your connections, and then you're like kind of like putting yourself into this abundance mindset without even realizing because you're just changing your habits. And then it's crazy how much improvement that single decision, like little LinkedIn posting habit, can then turn into. Like, I've seen it so many times. I see it with you. I've seen it with everyone in my cohort, where it's like it's a snowball effect. One thing leads to another, and then it leads to another, and now they're happy and healthy and maybe rich or in the future. Yeah,
I think that's actually happened by accident. I'm just thinking now, I have a recurring calendar invite, 8 till 9, post and engage, and that's not changed since 6 months ago. And now that I have a calendar and I abide by that, I was like, okay, I'll put gym in there, I'll put my dancing in there, and then I'm like, ooh, I actually write my post at night. I actually have a lot more time than I think. And I was like, okay, I can do that, and I can do that. So it actually has happened. So crazy, yeah.
Yeah, because when you're posting on LinkedIn, you're like, okay, I need more things to talk about now. I'm going to go ahead and learn this so I can talk about it. Then you're consistently like evolving. And then you're teaching others what you're learning. Then you're like remembering it better. Then you can teach something else. Then that post might lead to a really good connection by a CEO that you really always wanted to like work with, and like, I really like this post. Oh wow, okay. Oh, I also dance bachata. You dance bachata. Let's connect. And like me. And then it's just like it's crazy.
And you don't know when that connection is going to happen. Like, for me, traveling is massive. Like, I had a different reason to go to Barcelona, but I met 2 people from the cohort who then, funny enough, Holly Cope, I asked her for advice for this podcast, and this would have been a completely different podcast if I didn't speak to Holly, because she gave me some amazing advice, and that would have never happened if I didn't have those like
connections.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so cool.
The internet is wild.
The internet is amazing. You just got to use it. Before we finish, I have a question. So what's next for Lara? I know you get asked this a lot, but I feel like I have to ask it again because every 3 months is something different.
I feel like, I consistently being on the internet, I feel like I'm 50 years old. I'm 26. I've lived so many different lives. I just turned myself around so much. What's next? I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing next week. I just know I want to be happy. I'm consistently chasing happiness and fulfillment, whatever that might be. I feel like right now, happiness and fulfillment looks like going all in on the cohort. I stopped the agency. I had a personal branding agency. I stopped that. I'm going full force on the cohorts. So, like, I consistently provide. Yeah, because it's really good. Like, the community is amazing, and I want to make it the best community there is on LinkedIn, and it's looking like that. And I want to optimize that. So putting all my effort in that and YouTube and video content, which is something that is bringing me a lot of joy because it's new. I'm learning a lot, and it's improving my skill set for the cohort. Like, the lessons on the cohort now are like very much like I feel like they've leveled up a little bit. Just because the way I communicate on YouTube and the way I'm scripting my content, it's similar to how I'm teaching it now, which is more entertaining for people. It like resonates more. Then they're able to take immediate action from it, just because the type of content they're being taught live is incredibly actionable. So it's like one of them, like they're both, those two things are complementing to each other. So I'm constantly evolving, and it's like going to be a great, moving needle to what I'm trying to achieve.
So exciting. I was going to ask you and I forgot, but I think you just did for me now, was what would you do if LinkedIn was deleted?
YouTube.
And I was going to say, like, this naturally could happen, potentially, like, it's all connected.
Yeah, I'm moving more on to YouTube and newsletter just because LinkedIn, I don't know, there's like something going on there. I love LinkedIn, but I feel like I need to now, I have the asset to go omnichannel and go bigger. Like, I've grown a big, good following on LinkedIn. And I always say, don't focus on 3 platforms, always focus on one until you have enough leverage to build on another. And I think I've got that. Yeah. So I have the time. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to have time and not be busy. I have the time now to build up a platform on YouTube. I'm going to do it. And it's exciting, and I really like it.
100%. And if you've been following her on LinkedIn, doesn't look like she stopped. she's still crushing it. Still getting 10K followers a month, like plus.
Yes.
Amazing. Lara, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.